Hi Elena, wanted to make a quick video walking you through some of the details on these. Because you mentioned your treads were 1.5 inches, I just wanted to go over some of the issues that you'll be dealing with the rounded nose, being that your treads are 1.5 inches. So this here is a standard tread, which is 1 inch or 1 1/8 inches. This here would be a dimensional lumber tread, which generally is the 1.5 inches or just under. And I'm guessing that's what you've got if you checked your, the majority of your treads. I noticed the one you'd pulled back was just the pie step, which looked like it had a lip added to the front of it. So if that's the only one you checked and you've only got that situation there, and the rest of your treads are this, because they do look rounded, and the rest of your treads are this, then that would be great because these would work good. The issue when you have 1.5 inch tread with a rounded nose, this is a nose made for 1.5 inch tread. The problem with this, and the reason why presents this problem, is that you can see the radius begins about here, and so in order to make that full radius around the 1.5 inches, because the dip starts so far back from the nose, that doesn't meet building requirements and essentially creates a safety issue because the front of the tread begins to taper so far. There are some situations where this type of nose is okay. I would say inside of the residential home is not a spot where it's going to work very well. So essentially I just made them as big as I could. This is one of your treads here. If you've got a tread like this that we have to install it on, then I want to kind of show you some of the things to do. If you do have the 1 inch or 1 1/8 inches rounded treads like this, then these are going to work great for you. You just want to get glue in that nose, and then of course glue all over your tread surface there. I like to just put it on from a caulk gun, and a urethane based glue. The PL Premium 3X is a good one. You can get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. And then a V-notch trowel to spread it around on this tread surface, and then you can just install it like that. And that, of course, is after templating the step, and you want to cut both sides of the tread so that you capture the angle, because you're going to find that this angle on the ends is going to be slightly different on every single tread. It might dive back a little bit. It might, grow as it goes towards the back, but like I say, you want to capture a template there in order to know where you want to cut both sides to get it to fit well. So if we're trying to get this tread onto 1.5 inches subsurface, I'm just going to remove this real quick. Because if we are dealing with that 1.5 inches on all the treads, then here's going to be my recommendations of what to do in regard to that. Okay, so this here is what we call, bumping the camera, sorry about that. This here is what we call a hand router, a small palm router, they're sometimes called. They're not very expensive. You can pick them up for 60 to maybe a little over $100 at Amazon, Home Depot, Lowe's. And the bit I've got in here is called a roundover bit. I had another example of that somewhere. But you can see that it just creates a rounded profile and then has this guide here. And so we're going to want to create that along the top there. Along the bottom, I've got here what's called a flush bit. You can see this is the guide here, this bearing guide. And then this part here is just going to cut out whatever the guide is against. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 1 inch or an inch and an eighth or an inch and a 16th or whatnot piece, just screw in a piece across there for my guide. And then I'm going to take this and running it, this of course has a plate here, but so running it along whatever this 1 inch guide is I've installed here, I'll just take this and run it along that, and it'll cut out this 1 inch depth all along there, making this then an inch or an inch and an eighth or so thick. At which point I would use the roundover bit, just running across the face here to round over the bottom, and then run across the top here to round over the top. And so I'll just quickly round over the top here so you can see what that looks like. You see how you can see how that puts a rounded edge on it. And if we cut out, like say, that bottom section with this router, and maybe I'll set that up real quick. I'll pause the video. Okay, I've got my 1 inch guide here, and now I'm going to take this hand router, running it along here. Yeah, that dying battery there. So you can see how that is going to change our depth for the nose piece there. And I'm going to give it one more pass here. Okay, then I'll remove the guide piece here. And then round this bottom again. Okay, so you can see how fairly simply with just those 3 passes of that router, how we can make this nosing work for us. You know, you could use like a multi-tool to try and cut the bottom off and do that. That's just going to take a long time. Of course, you probably would need a multi-tool to cut the very ends off where you can't get the router to, which is, you know, something like this. This is a multi-tool. It, you know, vibrates. It is the best way, at least. But you can see how that face will work much better with this. And you want to get this face, you know, this front face here of the nosing as tight to this as possible. And if you can't get it tight, you want to make sure this is filled with glue. So, like I say, with the looks of this, I probably need to make, you know, an extra pass here. In fact, could probably make that using what we've already cut as a guide. So there you can see that that's, you know, going to be deep enough to capture all this. Now, you could trim this back as needed. Right now, it's just cut to the maximum allowed by the National Building Code, which is 1.25 inches. So you can always, you know, trim some of this off, like I say, as needed. But that's going to be my recommended way of installing these on 1.5 inch tread. Another way you could do it, if you don't see yourself, you know, doing this router version, and you need to be able to just put it back here, is that you can cut this much closer to the radius here, like say cut it there, and that way, you know, you can minimize this space as much as possible, and you can just have this finish edge dive into the bottom 1/4 inch essentially of this 1.5 inches, if that makes sense the way that's sitting right there. So you'd want to cut it back to say about there, and then that inside there you'd either want to fill all the way with glue, or you could even cut some rounded pieces, or you know, try and fill that with a piece of scab lumber, you know, a strip of lumber. But you definitely want the inside of that nose filled with you know, polyurethane based glue. You may run into stuff talking about, should you keep the pad on or not? I think you absolutely should. The pad's gonna give you some traction as that glue sets up. And because this is a stone poly composite, this is a pretty hard material, especially if you remove this pad, and it makes them slick. So if you're in socks or something, it's going to make the stairs really slippery. So by keeping this pad, you're retaining some of that flex that is going to be given to this surface. So you have a little bit of give to be able to grab some traction, which is a nice safety feature to keep that pad. I think that's about it. If you have any questions or anything with these, let me know.